watching Truth versus Hype. As an Intelligence Bureau report claims that foreign-funded NGOs are working against India's development continues to spark controversy, we take a hard look at the IB's findings to discover loopholes, generalizations, and an oversimplification of all the categories they tackle, whether it's NGOs, international funding, or even definitions of growth. At the core of the IB report is the allegation that NGOs receive crores of foreign funds via the Foreign Contribution Regulations Act to pursue devious agendas. But is the IB's basic claim of the nature and extent of foreign funding borne out by the facts? The FCRA website, which makes all contributions to NGOs public, suggests otherwise. For starters, none of the NGOs in the IB list make it to the top recipients of FCRA. During the year 2011-12, the last year for which we have comprehensive data, Indian NGOs received about 11,000 crore rupees in foreign donations, most of which came from faith-based organizations. Like Compassion International of USA, which remitted about 200 crores, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints about 130 crores, and a German faith-based NGO remitting about 51 crores. The main activities for which these funds have been remitted are rural development, welfare of children, and the construction and maintenance of schools and colleges. Of the four main NGOs listed in the IB report, collectively they've received only a fraction of the total amount.
It's wrong to say that only NGOs which are working in, as the Intelligence Bureau put it, working in the area of environment or working against, as it were, the economic interests of the country, to say that those NGOs are getting all the money and crores of rupees may not be correct. A whole lot of other NGOs, in the social religious space, they get a huge lot of funding from abroad.
But what of the IB's claims that money that comes in for, let's say, faith-based NGOs is diverted for overtly political ends? We put this to Vandana Shiva, who's mentioned in the report for her strident opposition to GM crops. According to the self-disclosure on the FCRA site, her NGO, Navdanya Trust, received about 3 crores in 2011, all of it for agricultural purposes. Now it says clearly that the foreign funding you've received is for agricultural purposes, which doesn't seem to match the campaign that you're running against GM foods.
Yeah, I mean, our funders are very strict. We have primarily 2 donors, and both of them have very, very rigorous systems of budgets. The budgets are only for seed saving and training of farmers. That's what our main work is as Navdanya. Now, I, as Vandana Shiva, as a scientist, an independent ecologist, and a public citizen, have a separate existence, and my existence can't be mixed up.
So then how do you fund your individual campaign?
The campaign, my brain doesn't need payment. My conscience doesn't need payment. And in India, if I go to the courts, there are public interest lawyers who do this work pro bono.
Similarly, Greenpeace India received about 13 crores in the same year, all of it, the FCRA says, for environmental programs. So what you're saying is that the foreign funds you get, which says for environmental issues, you would say that the campaigns you're running against coal is defined as an environmental issue?
Most certainly, the coal campaign is a part of a climate and energy campaign.
So some of those funds that come in also go into that?
Including the money we also raise here in India. So we raised, for example, about 20 crores last year from Indian supporters here in India.
There is evidence of all these lists of names of
we
people?
maintain our database to the last level of detail.
Can we have a look?
Sure. So maybe you can, so this is an example of what, this is just an representation.
Of,
I'll have 2.5 million of this data. Just to give an example, if we have a constituent number, we have the first name, last name, address, city where the supporter was inducted. So you have Secunderabad, Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Ludhiana, Ghaziabad. Okay. You have the mobile numbers, start of date, what is the amount they're giving per month, and I'll explain briefly what our fundraising model is. What is the frequency? What is the payment? What is the authorization? What is the bank account number?
So you're saying, contrary to some of the suggestions by these agencies, that these are all genuine contributors. These are not
all of them.
Names
All of them are available to the last level of detail. All of this, like I was saying, is either going through a bank debit or through a credit card transaction, which is also filled in a form, which we have, which is available with the banks and available with every authority which needs that data.
There may well be a case for a comprehensive, nuanced look at NGO funding, except the IB report doesn't make that point, instead setting up a polarity between a virtuous corporate political establishment on one hand and villainous NGOs on the other, completely ignoring the complexity of the relationship between funders, big NGOs, and the policy establishment. Of this, there can be no better example than the curious case of ClimateWorks, a US-based funding agency targeted by the IB for funding Greenpeace to encourage people-centric protests in order to stop new coal plants. On the basis of the IB's allegations, the Home Ministry has placed ClimateWorks and Greenpeace International on a watch list, which means any funds they route to India will first need clearance from the government, an action that seems to have been taken without sufficient due diligence. ClimateWorks' Indian chapter, Shakti Foundation, hardly seems like a radical outfit. Its board members include Shiv Sena leader and former Power Minister Suresh Prabhu, the country head of HSBC India Naina Lal Kidwai, Jamshed Godrej of Godrej and Boyce, and the former advisor to Prime Minister Nitin Desai. Other advisors include Rajiv Lal, the head of IDFC, the government-backed infrastructure lending agency. Mr. Desai says Shakti Foundation receives a bulk of its funds from ClimateWorks but pursues a less confrontational agenda. How would you describe the support you get from ClimateWorks? Are they the majority funder?
Yes, they are the majority funder right now.
Okay, they provide the majority of funds.
But we are organized as a Section 25 Indian company with a very respectable board of directors and advisors. And I would say that we will continue to do our work because what we are doing is very much on the consistent with the policies which the government itself has laid down.
Shakti's focus is on shining the light on questions related to the environment, which are of very serious concern to us.
In fact, he says Shakti works extensively with governments, including funding projects of the government of Gujarat.
We work a lot with state governments, including Gujarat, Tamil Nadu.
You're working with the Gujarat government as well?
Yes. And essentially, because what we do is we help people who provide services which the governments use for mainly for capacity building.
So what kind of work do you do with the Gujarat government?
In Gujarat government, for instance, Terry did a study for us on the potential for renewable energy at a detailed local level, a training of people in implementing the environmental building code is another area.